The lease was sitting on my kitchen counter when my brother walked in without knocking. Again, and I remember thinking that I should have changed the locks months ago. He didn't say hello. He just looked at the paper, looked at me, and said, "You're not actually going to do this." It wasn't a question. I had been renovating my parents' house for 14 months at that point, not hiring someone to do it. Me. Every Saturday, sometimes Sundays too. I drove 40 minutes each way, brought my own tools, watched YouTube tutorials on how to retile a bathroom at midnight on Thursdays so I'd be ready by the weekend. I repainted the kitchen, replaced the water heater when it died in January, fixed the back porch railing that my dad kept saying was fine, even though it visibly wobbled when you touched it. I did all of this while working full-time as a project coordinator and paying my own rent on a one-bedroom apartment that I loved precisely because it was quiet. I did all of this because my parents' house was falling apart and I was the only one who showed up. My brother lived 20 minutes from them. My younger sister lived in the same town. Neither of them owned a single tool. The lease on my counter was for a condo 3 states away. A new job, a fresh start, something I had been quietly building toward for almost a year. I hadn't told anyone yet. I was waiting for the right moment. Apparently, my brother had found the printed confirmation email in my bag while I was in the bathroom at my parents' place the previous Sunday. He didn't mention it then. He just took a photo of it and drove home. "You can't leave," he said. He was standing in my kitchen, which he had entered using the spare key I gave him for emergencies. "Mom and Dad need you here." I set down my coffee mug. They have 2 other kids. He looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. Let me back up. My parents are good people in the way that a lot of parents are good, meaning they love their children and have also, consistently, for 30 years, behaved as though one of those children is a little more capable, a little more reliable, a little more available than the others. That child was me. I don't know exactly when it started. I think it's the kind of thing that calcifies slowly, one small assumption at a time, until suddenly it's just the operating truth of a family. She'll handle it. My brother is 3 years older than me. He works in sales, makes decent money, has a girlfriend he's been with for 6 years, and has absolutely no intention of marrying. And he has never once fixed anything in my parents' house. Not because he can't. He's physically capable. He just doesn't. The assumption has always been that I would. My sister is 5 years younger. She had 2 kids back to back in her mid-20s, and I genuinely do not begrudge her the difficulty of that. But her kids are school age now. She is not incapacitated. She just also doesn't show up. What happened, practically speaking, is that my parents' house was built in the 1970s and has needed consistent attention for the last decade. My dad's back surgery 2 years ago made it so he couldn't do the physical work himself. My mom manages their finances carefully, but they're on a fixed income now, and contractors in their area are not cheap. So the question of who would help became, quietly and without any formal conversation, answered. Me. I don't want to make myself sound like a martyr. I chose to help every single time. I said yes when they asked, and sometimes I offered before they did. What I'm telling you is that the choice was never distributed. No one ever called my brother and said, "Come fix the porch." No one ever asked my sister to spend her Saturdays spackling the garage wall. Those calls went to me, and I answered them. And for a long time, I told myself that this was just what family did, that I didn't mind, that I was the handy one, so it made sense. But 14 months of Saturdays will eventually make you do math. I had spent, by a conservative estimate, nearly $8,000 of my own money on that house. Materials I bought before my parents could offer to reimburse me, which they sometimes did and sometimes forgot to. Tools I purchased specifically for their projects. Gas money. One emergency plumber I'd called on a Tuesday night because my dad didn't want to bother anyone and had let a slow leak go until water was coming through the kitchen ceiling, and by the time I got there, the damage had already spread to the drywall. I had also missed a friend's wedding. I had canceled 3 separate weekend trips. I had spent my 30th birthday regrouting the master bathroom because my mom mentioned the week before that the grad had been bothering her. I was so accustomed to deprioritizing myself that I hadn't even registered the birthday thing as significant until I was on my knees in that bathroom at 2 p.m. on a Saturday, and my friend sent me a photo from the reception, and something in me just went very, very quiet. The kind that apologized. No. I almost deleted. The job was a senior coordinator role at a company I'd been watching for 2 years. I applied on a Thursday night, mostly because I was tired, and sometimes tired people do brave things. 3 rounds of interviews later, I had an offer letter. The salary was substantially better. The cost of living was lower. I had visited the city twice before and liked it both times. I signed a lease on a Tuesday. I gave my current employer notice on Wednesday. I told no one in my family. I was going to tell them. I want to be clear about that. I had a whole plan. I would tell them together, calmly, with enough lead time that we could figure out a system for the house. I was going to suggest they finally call a contractor for the bigger stuff. I was going to offer to help them find someone reliable. I had even drafted a list. My brother found the email before I could do any of that. So there he was, in my kitchen, on a Wednesday evening, telling me I couldn't leave. I'm not asking for permission, I said. You didn't even tell us. I'm telling you now. He sat down at my kitchen table like he owned it. He does this, occupies spaces as though they belong to him by default. Mom is going to be devastated. Mom has a son who lives 20 minutes away. I work. So do I. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "This is really selfish, you know that?" And something in me that had been wound tight for a very long time just didn't snap. Exactly. It loosened. Because I had been waiting, I realized, for someone to say it out loud, for the accusation to finally become audible instead of just hovering in the air of every family gathering, every time I showed up and my siblings didn't, every time my parents thanked me in that particular tone that implied they had expected nothing less. "I need you to leave my apartment," I said. "We're not done. I need you to leave, and I need you to give me back my spare key." He stared at me. He wasn't used to me being direct like that. Honestly, neither was I. He left. He didn't give back the key. He set it on the counter with a kind of deliberate, theatrical weight that was meant to communicate something. I picked it up and put it in my pocket and texted a locksmith for the next morning. The call with my parents happened 2 days later. I had wanted to do it in person, but my brother had already told them, because of course he had. So by the time I arrived on Friday evening, my mom already had that particular expression she gets, somewhere between hurt and bracing for disappointment, and my dad was sitting in his recliner not quite looking at me. I sat down. I didn't make them a speech. I just told them what was true. I had taken a job in another city. I was leaving in 6 weeks. I loved them, and I would visit, and I wanted to help them find a reliable contractor before I left. My mom said, "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" I was waiting for the right time. "Your brother says you've been planning this for months." "I've been planning it for about 3 months, yes. And you didn't think we deserved to know?" I took a breath. I made a decision about my own life, and I wanted to be sure before I told anyone. I don't think that's something I need to apologize for. She looked at her hands. My dad still wasn't quite meeting my eyes. Then he said quietly, "The back gutters still need work." And that was the moment. Not dramatic, not a blow-up. Just my father, upon being told that his youngest daughter was moving across the country, mentioning the gutters. I understood, sitting there, that nothing I could have said would have been received differently, that the house, the repairs, the Saturdays, they had not been seen as sacrifice. They had been filed under expected. And now that I was withdrawing the expected thing, there was confusion and hurt and absolutely no reckoning with how we had arrived here. I called a contractor that weekend, got quotes from 3 different companies, sent my parents a comparison document with notes, set up an introductory call with the one I thought was most reliable. His name was Paul. He'd been in business for 17 years, had good reviews, was clear about pricing. I gave my parents his number and told them to call whenever they were ready. My brother texted me while I was doing this. The text said, "You know you're blowing up this family, right?" I read it twice. Then I put my phone face down and kept working on the comparison document. My sister called me the following week. I had been wondering when she would. She was gentler than my brother. She usually is. But the shape of the conversation was the same. How could I do this? What were Mom and Dad going to do? Did I understand how hard this was for everyone? "Is it hard for you?" I asked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, is it hard for you personally? Are you going to miss me?" A pause. "Of course I'm going to miss you. But I'm just worried about the house." About Mom and Dad. I found them a contractor. I sent you his information too. That's not the same as you being here. No, I said. It's not. But I've been the one being here for a long time, and I'd like to try something else. She didn't have an answer for that. There was a final family dinner 3 weeks before I left. My mom made pot roast, which she only does for significant occasions, and for a while, it was almost normal. My brother talked about work. My sister's kids colored at the end of the table. My dad watched a game with the sound low in the background, and I sat there and thought about how much I had loved these people, how much I still loved them, and how love had somehow gotten tangled up with availability until the two things were indistinguishable. Then my brother, over the pot roast, said, I still don't understand why you couldn't have just taken a remote job. Stayed here. I put down my fork. Because I didn't want to. That's not a reason. It's the only reason I'm required to give. My mom made a small sound. My dad lifted his plate. My brother shook his head like I was being deliberately difficult, and something about that headshake, so familiar, so accustomed to meeting no resistance from me, made me feel clearer than I had in years. I have spent, I said, and my voice came out calm, which surprised me, the last 14 months renovating this house. I have missed events that mattered to me. I have spent money I didn't always have to spare. I have done this because I love you all and because no one else was doing it. I am not doing it anymore. I have found you someone reliable who can, and I am moving to build a life that I want. Nobody said anything for a moment. Then my mom said, You make it sound like we forced you. You didn't force me. You assumed me. There's a difference. That was the last heavy conversation. The remaining weeks were surface level, logistics, the few small things I'd left at my parents' place, a goodbye that was genuinely warm even if something underneath it had shifted permanently. Moving day was a Thursday. I had hired movers this time, a decision I'd had to actively give myself permission to make, because my instinct was still to do everything myself, to minimize what I asked for. The movers were efficient. They were done in under 4 hours. I drove out of my city on a Thursday afternoon with my car packed and my cat in the back seat complaining at regular intervals. And I did not cry until I hit the highway. And even then, it wasn't grief exactly. It was release. It was the particular feeling of something that has been tight for a very long time, finally going slack. My parents called that evening. My mom said she hoped the drive was safe. My dad asked if I'd remembered to pack the toolkit he'd given me years ago. I had. It was the first thing I put in the car. I'll call when I get there, I said. I did. And they were glad to hear from me, and I was glad to call them. And the distance that existed between us now was not only geographic, but it was also, in some ways, more honest than any distance we'd had before, the kind that apologized Monday. My mom texted me a photo. The gutters looked good. I was sitting in my new apartment, unpacked boxes still stacked in the corner, afternoon light coming through a window I'd never looked out of before, and I looked at that photo of the gutters for a long moment. Then I set my phone down, opened my laptop, and started planning what to do with my first free Saturday in 14 months.